From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually you see me here with my dear friend Hector Boza. Hector, unfortunately, continues to battle major health issues. So at this time, I'm asking for the entire viewing audience to please keep Hector in your prayers. It would be greatly appreciated, and he could use all the support that he can get. I know you guys see him and I battling each other out on TV so many times in the past, but there's one thing that's never changed. Hector and I have been friends basically since we first started here at the station about 13 years ago. I've been doing this show for the last almost 12 years now. As a matter of fact, next month, we're going to celebrate our 12-year anniversary of when we first signed on to this show. Hector has been along for the ride for, I would say, maybe 5 or 6 out of those years. In that time, he has become a class act, a gentleman, a genuine human being, and he's also become like the brother that I've never had. So I ask everyone, please send your well wishes to Mr. Boza. You can contact him on Facebook. You can also contact him through his email address. I think it's homeinvader@yahoo.com, but definitely get him on his Facebook page because he looks at his Facebook page constantly. So please send all your prayers out to Hector, and it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Now, since it's the start of February, that can only mean one thing, and that's the fact that now that football season is over, after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, their very first Super Bowl, it's time for baseball season to make its way into the equation. This week is when pitchers and catchers all report to their respective camps. Earlier today, the Mets started their camp, and tomorrow the Yankees are going to be starting their camp. When you think about it, there is a lot riding on the Yankees this year. And I think the Yankee players themselves have been putting more pressure on themselves than the media has. After the surprising run that they had last year, being the first wild card and then beating Minnesota for that wild card game, then beating Cleveland in the division series, and then taking the Astros to the limit in the American League Championship Series, you can bet that the Yankees were going to do all they could to try and ensure a World Series berth this year. That's why they made the trade for Giancarlo Stanton, and that's also why you've got guys like Adam Warren saying that there is a real hunger from some of the players about going really far this year. And when you think about it, Stanton, Aaron Judge, Didi Gregorius, Gary Sanchez, Greg Bird, those are 5 sluggers in the lineup that opposing pitchers have to pitch against sometime this season. Exactly how is any pitcher going to be able to get the ball past these guys in the clutch? All I can say is I do not want to be any starter or reliever on the opposing team when April comes around in a couple of months. So first things first, the Yankees are going to be reporting tomorrow to Tampa, and there's still some questions that have to be answered regarding this team. First and foremost, who's going to be the 5th starter to join Masahiro Tanaka and CC Sabathia and Sonny Gray and Luis Severino, who surprised everyone last year by having an outstanding third Major League season. Secondly, who is going to be the second baseman and the third baseman? Because the Yankees already have first and shortstop set in stone. Greg Bird, they're going to hope that he plays a full season, because after being hurt all of for the majority of last year and then all of the year before, they need someone to get the bulk of the time at first base. That's also why they have Tyler Austin to back up Bird in the event that he goes down with an injury again. But the plan is to have Greg Bird be the everyday first baseman. Now, who's going to take second? Who's going to take third? The Yankees have quite a few young players that they want to give a little bit of a chance to. There's one of their prospects, Gleyber Torres, of course. They might give him a shot at either second or third. There's also Tyler Wade. There's Miguel Andujar, who really sparkled in a couple of games last year, specifically in his Major League debut. There's also Ronald Torreyes, who played just over 100 games and did everything that was asked of him. He was clutch coming off the bench. He was clutch as a starter. It seems like there's no task that this kid cannot do. He played basically 2 out of the 3 spots on the infield, and he was marvelous last year. So maybe he will be the one to take second base in the meantime. Third, there's the matter of the outfield. The Yankees are 7 deep in the outfield. You already know that Aaron Judge is probably going to be taking the time in right field, and maybe Giancarlo Stanton will spell Judge every once in a while in right, while Judge takes over at designated hitter. Giancarlo could probably be the designated hitter himself for the majority of the season. But there's also the matter of left and center. Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury are not getting any younger. And if anything, Jacoby Ellsbury has practically been stealing money ever since he signed that big contract with the Yankees a few years ago. Although his base running has been very good, he has been a very mediocre contact hitter. He's barely hitting around 260, and the Yankees did not pay 7 years and $140 million for a 260 hitter. So, where does this leave the Yankees? Do they make a trade to acquire a starting pitcher in exchange for Ellsbury? Maybe make Aaron Hicks the center fielder, because Aaron Hicks has been clamoring to be the everyday center fielder now. He's going to have to prove himself over the long haul of a season. Not that he hasn't done it in the past, because last year he surprised people as a hitter. But there's also the matter of the acquisition that the Yankees made from the Padres, Jabari Blash, a kid who's gotten little time yet has shown some flashes that he could be a really good hitter and overall player. So you consider Ellsbury, Gardner, Stanton, Judge, Blash, also Aaron Hicks, and the kid that really helped the Yankees at times last year, Clint Frazier. The Yankees are going to have to do something to try and lessen the load in the outfield. Try and cut it down from 7 to 5. So these are some questions that the Yankees are really going to have to answer. Plus, there's the issue of the bench. Who are the Yankees going to have as their trustworthy go-to guys coming off the bench? I doubt they would make any of their kids sit for the majority of the season and get a pinch hitting opportunity like once or twice a week. That's just not fair to the guys. So this is where the new manager, Aaron Boone, comes in. And this is his first rodeo, because Boone, after retiring as a player, has been spending all of his time in the broadcast booth, mostly for ESPN. And obviously the Yankees saw something in him that made them think he was the guy to replace Joe Girardi as the manager for this year and beyond. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what kind of philosophy that Aaron Boone is going to have with the team this year. From what I understand, he believes in communication. So hopefully the Yankees will be able to mesh well with the new manager. And also he's got a whole new coaching staff to work with. So let's see exactly what goes on with the Yankees. If I'm not mistaken, I think they hired the former slugger Phil Nevin to be their everyday coach for this season. As it turns out, Phil Nevin's going to be the third base coach this year. And a veteran coach, Reggie Willits, is going to be the first base coach. And they also have a brand new hitting coach, which is Alan Cockrell. And Marcus Timms is back as one of the assistant hitting coaches. So let's see exactly what happens with this pitching staff and with this coaching staff for next season. As far as the Mets are concerned, well, at least you can't blame them for being asleep at the wheel when it came to the offseason, because they did make quite a few roster moves. Number one, they got a new manager. They got Mickey Callaway, the former Indians bench coach, to be the new manager now. And we can already see that Mickey Callaway might be rubbing off well on a few players, because he's already created a really positive atmosphere for the roster and for the locker room. And then there were the additions that they made, or in this case, the return of some familiar faces, most notably bringing Jay Bruce back. Also making the deal to bring in Todd Frazier to be the third baseman, getting him from the Yankees. There's also getting Adrian Gonzalez, who was hurt for the majority of last year, but now is going to have a new lease on life on the East Coast after playing more than a decade on the West Coast with the Padres and the Dodgers. There's also the matter of the pitching staff. The pitching staff, specifically Noah Syndergaard and Matt Harvey and Steven Matz, busted their tails to try and get in shape for the new season, especially after they missed a lot of time last year. Syndergaard specifically looks a lot more bulked in the upper body, and something tells me that he's going to really have a lot to prove this year when it comes to the new season. There's also the issue of Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom had a really outstanding year last year. He was the saving grace of that entire staff and wound up being the ace of the staff. Let's see if he can top what he did in his 15-win season of 2017. There's also the issue of the bullpen. Now we've heard that Mickey Callaway wants to have a closer by committee. It's not going to be Jeurys Familia anymore. That's why he also brought in Anthony Swarzak to be maybe a de facto closer, maybe the setup guy. And when you think about it, the bullpen doesn't seem so bad. I mean, Swarzak pitched reasonably well when he was in Milwaukee. And you also consider Familia. He's going to have a full season to work with. There's also A.J. Ramos, who pitched reasonably well in spots last year. Jerry Blevins, who's going to have a hell of a lot to prove, especially after he blew quite a few saves last year and saw his ERA get pretty bloated. So when you think about it, defensively, Adrian Gonzalez at first. Now you have Asdrubal Cabrera, now possibly being the second baseman. Ahmed Rosario, who was modest at best as a hitter last year. Now he's going to be the everyday shortstop, or the Mets so hope. And, of course, Frazier being the third baseman. And Yankee fans who saw Frazier play last year know he will give them quite a bit of power, but very, very, very little average and a whole lot of strikeouts. But he's going to supply them with really good defense at third base. And you also consider the outfield. You have Yoenis Cespedes. Juan Lagares is going to take over in center for the time being until Michael Conforto comes back from his shoulder surgery. There's also the issue of Jay Bruce in right. So when you think about it, the infield and the outfield are decent at best. Let's see what they could do in a live game, though. There's still the issue of catcher. Sorry, but I can tell you right now, Travis d'Arnaud is really on thin ice in my eyes. If he does not raise his production at the plate anytime soon, you may see the Mets go someplace else for a catcher. So consider him and Kevin Plawecki as the catching platoon. And then you have that starting rotation. DeGrom, Syndergaard, Harvey, Matz, maybe Zach Wheeler, maybe Seth Lugo, who was also hurt at times last year, maybe Robert Gesellman, who was a bit of a disappointment, but was able to bounce back just a little bit at the end of the season. There's also that bullpen. This Mets team has a lot to prove to everyone, fans and media. And it's already World Series or playoffs and or World Series or bust with this team. And this is also where Sandy Alderson has a real point to prove, because with the moves that he made, he figured that less would be more. But at the same time, you look at what some of the other teams have done. For example, the San Francisco Giants made that big trade to get Evan Longoria from the Rays. Then you saw the Angels give a big fat contract to Justin Upton last year. Then there was the issue of Yu Darvish signing a new contract with the Cubs, a 6-year, $126 million contract. 6 years, $126 million, excuse me, for a kid who basically stunk it up when he pitched for the Dodgers in the World Series last year. So if the Cubs are counting on Yu Darvish to help them make a playoff push, he better start earning his money now. As far as everything else in baseball, I counted maybe 120 to 130, maybe 140 free agents that are still available to try and cut a deal with. You figure Mike Moustakas and maybe Eric Hosmer. Well, Mike Moustakas specifically, because he's been without a job. He was probably one of the most productive third basemen last year. A .270 average with about 24 home runs, and still, he's without a job. There's also the matter of Jose Bautista. His production went way down last year. Maybe if he got a fresh start somewhere, he might be able to make a contribution to a contender. Otherwise, could it be that maybe his time is up? Who knows? All I know is there are some very high-profile free agents who still have not found any work this season. And this Major League season is going to look pretty interesting. The Astros are the defending champions, and they are going to make a push for a second straight title. They made the trade for Garrett Cole, a guy that the Yankees might have shown some interest in over the winter, but the asking price was too much. So now you put Garrett Cole in there with Justin Verlander and Dallas Keuchel and Colin McHugh. That's a quartet that is going to be deadly against the rest of the American League by the time the season starts in late March. As far as what's going on in the rest of the league, the Angels have gotten slightly better. We mentioned that they gave that big contract to Justin Upton. They also made a couple of moves to improve their infield as well. So look for the Angels to possibly bounce back. As far as the American League Central, look for the Indians to still try and make a push to win that ever-elusive championship that is now 70 years and counting from their grasp. The Eastern Division, obviously the Yankees are going to be looked at as the favorites, but do not count Boston out, though. They had a really solid season last year winning the East. So you figure if their horses are healthy, if they're really big boppers like Dustin Pedroia are healthy, maybe they might be able to do a major push for a championship. And also, from what I understand, David Price is going into the walk here of his contract because he has option years that he can exercise if he wants to. And if not, then he might be a part of that big free agent class of 2018 that's coming up. And speaking of which, the guy from the Nationals, Bryce Harper, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. You can bet your bottom dollar that there's a strong possibility he's going to be the first $30 million a year player in the major leagues. Whether it's with the Nationals or somebody else, And look for those Nationals to make a push to win another division championship and win that ever-elusive division series. It's been 37 years since they last won a division series. Other than that, they've done nothing in the playoffs. I've heard that maybe Philadelphia is going to be improving. They've added some pieces to their arsenal. Let's see exactly what they can do for the rest of the year. They're building with some young players. The Braves are building with some young players as well. The Marlins, it seems like they continue to shortchange their fan base and trade away every single young star that they have. First it was Stanton. Excuse me. Then there was Christian Yelich, and then there was JT Realmuto. Now we're hearing maybe they might be making a deal for another one of their stars. Who knows? As far as the Central is concerned, last year the Cubs were the champions. Now that they added Yu Darvish, can they make a push? Possibly. It depends on the rest of the pitching staff, because a couple of guys from that staff are still out without a job. John Lackey's without a job. Jake Arrieta is without a job. And somehow, at least Jake Arrieta has not returned to Chicago yet. I'm wondering exactly what the Cubs' mindset is as far as what they want to do here. Don't be sleeping on St. Louis. I think they might be able to do some stuff. Other than that, there's been a lot of really good things being said about Milwaukee, especially with the moves that they made last season. One of which was getting Gerard Dyson from Kansas City, which I thought was a brilliant move for them to get to play in the outfield. Correction, it was Lorenzo Cain. The Brewers wound up getting a big contract with Lorenzo Cain, and of course, Christian Yelich wound up coming from Florida, and now they're going to be in the same outfield together. So there's a strong possibility the Brewers might be making a move for at least one of those wild card spots in the event that they're unable to get to the Central Division title. And now they have Travis Shaw to be their everyday third baseman. And now they're going to be going with a hodgepodge of pitchers here. They've got Matt Albers to be in the bullpen. Yovani Gallardo is one of their starters. Jeremy Jefferson, their bullpen. So when you think about it, the Brewers might have to count on their big boppers in order to get them through the hump this season. Other than that, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh might be in rebuilding mode. From what I understand, specifically Pittsburgh, especially after they traded away their star center fielder. Cincinnati is also in rebuilding mode. They've got a couple of young players that they're going to be going to. As far as the West is concerned, they had a lot of injuries last year, but now they're really starting to make that move. Madison Bumgarner is now back full-time and at full strength. And also, they have Andrew McCutchen, who they got from the Pirates, the star center fielder from the Pirates, to be their everyday center fielder. They also have Andrew McCutchen. Hunter Pence is going to be coming back. And as we speak, I just got an instant message from my friend Lynn. And Pablo Sandoval is going to be probably doing some bench work for them in the event that Evan Longoria is unable to play. Other than that, it all falls on the pitching staff. Bumgarner, of course, Johnny Cueto, also Jeff Samardzija. They're hoping for big seasons from them. Now, let's see exactly how things are going to shape up for the Giants. This is an even-numbered year, and anybody that saw the Giants play in the past, they saw them win the World Series in even-numbered years. 2010, 2012, 2014. They were a wild card in 2016. Now it's 2018. Is this the year that the Giants make a playoff push? Logic says yes, because it's an even-numbered year, but let's see what the games say. As far as the Dodgers themselves, they're the defending Western Division champions, but they not necessarily had that much turnover, but at the same time, a lot of their young players have really been battle-tested now. Bellinger, Turner, Seager. Now they brought back Matt Kemp for a second tour of duty. Let's see. Also, Jock Peterson. Let's see what Yasiel Puig can do on his best behavior, because he was a bit of a disappointment last year. And now there's the pitching staff with Kershaw. Also, Kenley Jansen as the everyday closer. Let's see what the Dodgers can do. As far as Colorado is concerned, Colorado was one of the wild cards last year, and so was Arizona. As far as what to expect out of Arizona, J.D. Martinez is still without a job. And quite frankly, I don't know how a slugger like that can still be without work. Is he going to be returning to the D-backs anytime soon? Your guess is as good as mine. Other than that, I don't know what else to tell you. They're not without really good players, though. I mean, there's still Yasmani Tomas, there's A.J. Pollock, Nick Ahmed, Paul Goldschmidt, who's an all-star first baseman, Alex Avila and Jeff Mathis, who was their catching platoon. Their starting pitching staff was reasonable at best. And there's also a newcomer that they brought in from Japan, Yoshihisa Hirano, who is a real seasoned veteran from the Japanese leagues. So let's see exactly what the D-backs can do for an encore. As for the other wild card from last year, Colorado, they really snuck up on a lot of people last year. So let's see exactly what they can do for an encore. They still have their guys back, and they also brought in Ian Desmond to be one of their stalwarts. So he's back for a second year with the Rockies. There's also Gerardo Parra. Charlie Blackmon had a terrific season. Trevor Story, of course, a revelation at shortstop. DJ LeMahieu, great at second. So let's see what the Dodgers can do, and the Rockies, and the Giants, and the Diamondbacks. It seems like that National League West is going to be really, really, really competitive this year, except for San Diego, who for some reason just cannot seem to find the right pieces to try and build with. Now, as far as what's going on elsewhere in baseball, we mentioned pitchers and catchers already started. The Mets started today, and the Yankees start tomorrow. The first set of games are going to be taking place on the 23rd of the month. The Yankees, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be playing against the Tigers. Let me see what we have here. Oh, hold on one second. I'm just got to check the schedule. I apologize, folks, if I keep on. Yep. As it turns out, the Yankees will be playing the Tigers on the 23rd. The Mets will open the season on that same day, and they're going to be going up against... Wait, just got to look for the... Here we are. The Mets have the Braves. So the Yankees are going to be playing the Tigers in Tampa, while the Mets have the Braves in Port St. Lucie. And I just got my text message from my friend Lynn. It's quite all right, Lynn. It's always great to hear from you. Now, as far as what's going on elsewhere in the world of sports, the Olympics started just this past Wednesday. They decided to start the Winter Olympics 2 days ahead of the opening ceremonies. And things have gotten really, really dramatic all of a sudden. There was a great cross-country skiing race that took place among the men yesterday. And as it turns out, the Norwegians wound up sweeping the podium. And this is the sixth night of competition. It's going to go up until, I think, the 25th of the month. And for hockey fans, the women's hockey tournament has already started. The men are going to be starting, I think, on Wednesday. So it'll be interesting to see how things turn out with the hockey program there. Now, let's see exactly what's going on with the 2018 Summer Olympics. Well, right now, here we are. Well, as it turns out, they wound up having speed skating earlier today. And as always, the Dutch, who dominate in the world of speed skating, wound up sweeping the podium in the women's 1,500-meter event. Oh, I stand corrected. It also turns out that only two Dutch skaters wound up taking the podium. Irene Wust wound up winning gold, and someone else took bronze. Sorry about that. Irene Wust actually took the silver medal, and Karlin Acharitki wound up taking bronze. And as it turns out, Miho Tagaki of Japan wound up making the podium as well. So on the flip side, we do have a couple of Americans that wound up making it to the podium. First off, a teenager from California wound up making the podium in his snowboarding event. I'm going to see if I can get the kid's name right now. It's Red Gerard. Red Gerard wound up winning gold in skiboarding, and his event turned out to be slopestyle snowboarding. He wound up getting the gold. The kid's only 17 years old. He's going to be turning 18 in July. Turns out he's going to have another event that he's going to be competing in a few days from now. But from what I understand, he's going to be doing The Late Show with Jimmy Fallon soon. So good luck to this kid as far as his next event is concerned. Of course, when you think of the Olympics, you think of the glamour sports. There's ice skating, figure skating that is, among the men and the women. And this is the first year that they've had team figure skating competition. And already, Canada wound up winning the gold in team figure skating. The Americans did take the bronze medal, though. And the Russian, or now they're calling them the Olympic athletes from Russia, wound up taking silver. There's also the matter of downhill skiing, and that's where Lindsey Vonn comes in. Lindsey Vonn is going to be competing in her best event, which is the women's downhill. So hopefully she'll have a chance to get up on the podium, especially after missing a ton of time because of her injuries. And she had some really serious knee injuries that she had to go through rehab for. And late last night and earlier today, I saw a little bit of the curling competition. I tell you, folks, I can't understand for the life of me how curling works, but for some reason, it just seems really, really intriguing to me. One thing is for certain, the Canadians own the curling track. And there's a strong possibility that they're going to be taking the gold medal once again in curling. They never have ever lost an Olympic gold medal in curling before. They dominate on the men's side and the women's side. And this is also the first year that they're going to be having mixed curling, men and women, which is something that the Canadians are not particularly happy with. And of course, when you think of Olympic hockey, usually you think of the NHL stars that wound up taking the ice the previous 20 years. But this year is going to be different. This time they're going back to using amateur players. At least the Americans are going to be going back to amateur players this time. It's going to be mostly college kids. The Russians are going to be going back to using some of their guys who competed in the Continental Hockey League, which is the second best hockey league in the world behind the NHL. So as far as what's going to happen with the hockey tournament, let's see exactly what's going on with hockey right now. We already know that the men are going to be starting their tournament this coming Wednesday. And I'm going to see exactly what's going on with hockey this time. Now, as far as hockey is concerned, here we are. Well, this year it's going to be Russia, of course, that's going to be competing. And I'm going to see if I can find more stuff in regards to Olympic hockey. In the meantime, let's talk about some stuff that's going on in the NBA. They're going to have the All-Star game take place in Los Angeles this coming weekend. And just recently, the trading deadline took place in the NBA. They moved it up to February 8th this time. And we know that the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Knicks wound up making a couple of deals for themselves. First, the Nets traded away Tyler Zeller, and they also wound up trading away the kid that they got from Milwaukee in exchange for Zeller, and wound up getting back a really intriguing young player. The Knicks, of course, made a splash by getting the kid that they were trying to draft 3 years ago, Emmanuel Mudiay, a point guard, who, by the way, is 6'5", has really long arms, is a great defensive player, a diligent worker, and is not very polished offensively. Do those skill sets ring a bell? If they do, then it's probably because those are the same skill sets that fit Frank Ntilikina, another kid who is 6'5", good defender, long arms, hard worker, but not much of a jump shot. So that means the Knicks are paying for two barely teenage kids that are playing the same position and who are going to be given a trial by fire as an NBA point guard. If this does not smack of incompetence by this once proud turned sorry franchise, I don't know what will. Now, this is what separates the have-nots from the haves. You look at what the Cavaliers did. They wound up trading away Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Derrick Rose, Iman Shumpert, and who did they get in return? Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr., Rodney Hood, and they also traded away Derrick Rose as well. The Cavaliers also traded away Derrick Rose. But look at what the Cavaliers got in return. Clarkson, Nance, Rodney Hood, and a trio of other players who are not only younger, but also better. They didn't have to try and make a trade for someone who is basically fitting the same profile as the guys that they gave away. And what happened in their first games together, the Cavaliers wound up blowing away the Celtics just yesterday on the same day that they retired Paul Pierce's number. And there was a lot of activity going on in the NBA, but it was painfully obvious who the winner at the trade deadline was. It was the Cavaliers. You consider who the Cavaliers now have on their roster, and I'm going to check their roster right now. Is it going to bring them any closer to a title? Not necessarily. Are they going to be taken seriously as a threat in the Eastern Conference? You better believe it. And look who the Cavaliers have in return now. They also wound up getting George Hill from the Kings. So now that's Jordan Clarkson, George Hill, Rodney Hood, Larry Nance Jr., and that's your quintet of guys who they wound up getting in return. And as it turns out, those same four guys, 4 out of the same 4 guys that I mentioned, George Hill, Jordan Clarkson, Rodney Hood, Larry Nance Jr., combined for 49 points yesterday to help LeBron blow out the Celtics. Now, this does not guarantee that they will be better down the road, or this does not guarantee that they will win the NBA title, but at least it created a little bit more of a fresh atmosphere in the locker room and on the court. Now, we mentioned the Celtics yesterday. Paul Pierce wound up having his number 34 jersey retired in a less than 1 hour ceremony. And there were a lot of Celtic greats that were in attendance that night. The Chief, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Antoine Walker, who was his teammate over at in the early part of the 2000s. Kevin Garnett was there as well. They were teammates on their championship team in 2008. You notice that there was one person who was mysteriously absent from this ceremony. Ray Allen. I get the sneaky suspicion that Ray Allen was kept at arm's length by the Celtics organization because they are still bitter at him for leaving to go to the Heat a few years ago. Why can't they just let bygones be bygones? Everyone is now in retirement now. Just move forward, please. Now, as far as what's going on in the National Hockey League, they already had their All-Star break, but there's a little bit of worrying to do, specifically with the Rangers and the Islanders. The Rangers have already announced that they might be auctioning off some of their best players to contenders now. Well, ever since they made that announcement, the Rangers have won 2 games in a row. They've beaten Boston. They've beaten Calgary and they've beaten Winnipeg twice in a row. They've got a big, big week coming up. They have Minnesota, the showdown with the Islanders, then Ottawa. What can the Rangers do to try and convince management to change their minds? Only time will tell. All I know is right now the Rangers are 2 points behind Carolina for that last playoff spot. The Islanders are 1 point behind Carolina for that last playoff spot. That's another team that's going to be needing some help as well. There's also the issue of John Tavares, who still does not have a contract for next year. Something has got to be done with John Tavares. They have to keep the kid for the long haul, because if not, they might be losing their potential franchise player. As far as the Devils are concerned, they are a point ahead for that top wildcard spot, 2 points ahead of Colorado and the Islanders. It is going to get really, really tight in the Eastern Conference down the road. You look at what's going on elsewhere in the Eastern Conference, by far the greatest surprise is the Vegas Golden Knights. Just recently, they returned they went to Pittsburgh for a game against the Penguins, and Marc-Andre Fleury, who had been the Penguins' longtime goalie and is now the stopper for the Knights, had a rather unhappy homecoming since the Knights lost to the Penguins, but he was very, very well greeted by the Penguin fans. Vegas has also had an outstanding season, so much so they lead the Western Conference by a point over Nashville for home ice advantage for the entire playoffs in the Western Conference. How this team has been able to put together such a monster of a squad, only experts know, because I couldn't even begin to tell you what's been going on with this team. All we know is They've gotten some really, really great contributions from William Karlsson, who's gotten 29 goals this year. We mentioned Fleury, who's been terrific in goal. William Karlsson, James Neal, Eric Haula, Jonathan Marchand, Riley Smith have been their 5 best players this season. And also, I just got to look at this. David Perron has also been their go-to guy as the setup man this season. David Perron has been their best setup man this season. They've gotten major, major contributions from their wings, and it's gotten to the point where they're no ordinary expansion team anymore. They stopped being an ordinary expansion team, I think, at the start of the season when they won their home opener. Now it's just a matter of how far they're going to go in the playoffs. It's not even a matter of whether they're going to make the playoffs. It's how far they're going to go. Now, back east, Tampa has basically been the best team in the East so far, leading the way with, it's Tampa leading the way with 79 points, and then Washington is a close second. And just the other night, Tampa had a really important game that they wound up winning. Let's see, this was a couple of nights ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, they won 4-3 over the Kings just 2 nights ago. And it's just a matter of time before we can tell if the Lightning are going to make a really important push for the top spot, not just in the East, but the entire league, getting that President's Trophy or not. Here in our neck of the woods, now that football season is over, this is the time where all of the officials make their way to Indianapolis for the scouting combine. They're going to be looking at every single prospect that's going to be making their way to the combine. As far as what the Jets and the Giants are going to do, what should they do? What are they going to do? First things first, with the Giants, everybody's convinced that they need to get a quarterback, but I'm not really so sure that's the avenue that they might want to go to. If anything, even though Eli Manning is getting up there in years, I still think that he is a good enough quarterback where he could try and make one last run at a championship. If anything, I think he was just a victim of inconsistency the last 2 out of 3 years. This past season was a major disappointment because he was unable to take care of the football that much. And he also worked behind a really paltry offensive line. And he did not have a go-to running back to give the ball. And he was missing 3 of his best receivers for a really huge chunk of time. He was missing Sterling Shepard. He was missing Odell Beckham Jr. He also missed Brandon Marshall. So you figure Beckham is going to be coming back strong. And by the way, Odell Beckham is going to want a new contract. Next year is his walk year. But for some reason, the Giants do not seem keen on trying to give him a new deal. If I'm the Giants, I do not let this guy walk away. You don't let a talent like that just up and walk away, especially someone who has the potential to catch 100 passes a year. But as far as what the Giants need, granted, Eli's 37 years old now, and he's got a couple of years left on his deal. So, could they use a quarterback? Yes. Do they have to get a quarterback? Not necessarily. If anything, they really need to upgrade their line, their backfield to support Eli, and while they're at it, see if they can upgrade that secondary too, because it seemed like everybody wound up getting burned at the wrong time last year. I think you could say the same thing for that entire defense. That entire defense was a real embarrassment to watch at times. If the event that the Giants were to go the route of a quarterback, I'm not really keen on the guy, but maybe they go after Sam Darnold. Maybe they go after Josh Rosen, who right now is the better overall player than Sam Darnold is. Maybe make a play for Josh Allen from Wyoming, who the Giants should go after, in my eyes, has to be Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is an every down running back who can take so much pressure off of Eli Manning and do that immediately. And if the Giants can reconstruct that offensive line and bring in some guys who can actually move their feet well and block, I think Saquon Barkley can be a real player for them. Otherwise, as far as the Jets are concerned, well, all we know is that Josh McCown is pretty much up in the air as far as whether he wants to come back next season or not. What do the Jets do? They have number 6 in the draft order. Do they make a play for a running back? Do they make a play for a quarterback as well? I mentioned before in the past, maybe Lamar Jackson could be one kid that the Jets look to. But at the same time, Jackson was a real disappointment last year. I mean, granted, he accounted for over 50 touchdowns. At the same time, he really let down in some big games. He turned the ball over. His field vision was not very good. So now it's just a matter of who the Jets go to in their backfield. I also would go after a running back. I would also make a play for some offensive line help. See if you could get a wide receiver. Get some help in the secondary. Because their front 7 is, I think, decent enough to try and make a push for next season. So let's see exactly what the Jets decide to do as far as their draft is concerned. Now let's see if we can go back to the Winter Olympics right now. All right. Now, as far as the men are concerned, you'll have to excuse me, folks. I'm still looking at my app here to see exactly what's going on. All right. Well, the men officially start their play on Wednesday night. And the Americans are going to be taking on Slovenia, while Slovakia takes on the Olympic athletes from Russia. Now, in the women's side, Korea's going to play Japan, and Sweden's going to take on Switzerland. That's the same day. Let's see exactly what we have here. Oh, I see the American women are doing pretty well for themselves. Their tournament actually started this past Saturday. For the record, the women that are competing in the hockey tournament are Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, the host country Korea, of course, the United States, Finland, Canada, and the Olympic athletes from Russia. And we already know that the Americans have already won 3-1 against Finland. They've also got their game tonight against the Olympic athletes from Russia. And then Thursday night, the showdown with Canada. And that is really going to take major precedence. Now, as far as the playoffs, the quarterfinals are going to be Saturday. The semifinals are going to be next Monday night. And then the medal round is going to be February 21st and February 22nd. That's for the women. The men start Wednesday, and the Americans are going to be going up against We mentioned that they're going to be going up against Slovenia to start. Now, on the men's portion of the hockey tournament, we have the Americans, of course. There's also Slovakia, Slovenia. There's the Olympic athletes from Russia, Finland, Germany, Norway, Sweden. Korea has a team in there. The Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Canada. So that's your Olympic hockey tournament for right now. Let's wish our American men and women well as the men send their college kids over, while the women send a really seasoned squad in this Olympic tournament. So we have roughly 3.5 minutes to go. So I want to take this time out to talk about something that I wound up seeing on television just the other night. Just last night, we were talking football earlier. Just last night, there was an E60 story on ESPN that spoke about the late quarterback Steve McNair. Anybody who is a big football fan remembers Steve McNair as a star at Alcorn State University, and then with the Titans, and then with the Ravens. Steve McNair led the Titans to their only Super Bowl appearance in the 1999 season, when they fell 1 yard short of winning a championship against the St. Louis Rams. Steve McNair played 13 seasons. Unfortunately, Steve McNair was tragically shot to death by a young woman who then turned the gun on herself. Turns out, some of Steve McNair's faults wound up catching up with him. Unfortunately, he wound up cheating on his wife quite a bit all throughout their marriage. And as it turns out, the woman that killed Steve McNair was his mistress. And there was a really touching story about Steve McNair's widow and their two sons, and how their oldest son, Tyler, played basketball for a short time, but then found his real calling in dance. He's now an accomplished dancer, and he's actually studying at NYU to become a professional dancer. So I'm going to wish Steve McNair's son, Tyler, a really, really wonderful time over at NYU. I wish him the best, and I certainly wish him well as he continues to find peace in the aftermath of his tragic father's death. So with that said, I am going to bid you adieu. And once again, if you can find it in your heart, please send your prayers out to Hector. Contact him through Facebook. He would love to hear from you. And if anything else, tell him that I said so. So that's going to do it for us. I want to say thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass. And thanks to you guys for watching at home. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Good night.